All right, good morning, scholars. Welcome to your science lesson for today. Fifth graders, first thing I want you to do is go ahead and put your name at the top. So I'm going to put Miss Tucker. Go ahead and put your house. Some of you can put the best house in the world, Bridges House. The rest of you go ahead and put your pool houses down. The date is 10/12/17. Now, as we go through our work today, some parts we're going to do together. Some parts I'm going to ask you to pause the video and do on your own. When you pause the video, I want you to put a thumb in the air so that Ms. Talbert knows that you are working silent and solo. Once you are done doing that work on your own, then you're going to check your answers with the work that I do on the screen. It is very important that in the times where I'm telling you to go ahead and pause the video, that you are working hard to try it on your own. I want you to push yourself, because if you're just copying down what I write, then you're not actually learning anything. So the first page we're going to go through together, there may be some parts where I ask you to pause the video. Again, when you pause it, put your thumb in the air so that Ms. Talbert knows you're working. Let's take a look at number 1. It says, what does the mongoose eat? If we look at our food chain, I'm going to find the mongoose. Here it is. I see that there's an arrow going to the mongoose. This arrow means gives energy to. Make your paper look like mine, so make sure you write those notes down. So what this question is asking here is what organism is actually giving energy to the mongoose? If we look next door, we see it as the snake. Go ahead and write snake for number 1. For number 2, what information does a food chain show? So if we look, we have arrows going from one organism to another. We know that this shows the flow of energy or the direction of energy in an ecosystem. So we'll write down the flow or direction of energy in an ecosystem. Or we can also write what organisms receive energy from. The next question says, where does the energy come from to help the leaves grow? Just go ahead and draw in a line right here. So I don't see an arrow actually going to the leaf. So where does this leaf get its energy? If the leaf is a plant, we know that all plants get their energy from sunlight. Go ahead and draw in your sun. We'll write sunlight up above. We'll draw an arrow from the sun to the leaf, and here we'll write sunlight. Below this, we're going to take some quick notes or some college notes. What I actually want you to write down is that in an ecosystem, and if I'm going too fast, you can pause the video at any time to write things down that I may have already covered. In an ecosystem, the energy source for all organisms and what sustains or keeps all life going or keeps all life going is the sun. You're going to see over and over throughout the next couple of weeks, and even on your assessment, this question of what is the energy source for this ecosystem? You should always know it's the sun. All right, what do the arrows in a food chain represent? We already wrote it down here, and we wrote it up here, but we're going to write it one more time. So you can write down the direction or flow of energy. And we can also write it represents what organisms give energy to other organisms. Excellent job. Let's take a look at the next question. It says, what is wrong with this food chain and why? So we see a grasshopper The arrow goes over, it gives energy to the frog gives energy to the python, which is a form of snake, and the snake gives energy to the grass. What I want you to do right now, go ahead and pause the video, put your thumb in the air, take 1 minute silent and solo, see if you can identify the problem in this food chain, write your answer in a complete sentence here. Ready? Go. All right, team and family, hopefully your answer sounds something like mine. If not, then you did it wrong. You need to fix it. Duh. So it says, what is wrong with this food chain and why? My response says, in this food chain, the snake is pictured giving energy to the grass. This is incorrect. Food chains always begin with a producer. That's a plant. So the grass should be the first organism in the food chain. If we were to recreate this food chain, it would be, I'm going to draw a box so we don't get this confused, but it should be grass, gives energy to the grasshopper, which gives energy to the frog, which gives energy to the python. Make sure you rewrite that at the bottom. All right, our last question says, Ms. Talbert said it was an inference, not an observation, when the commentator on TV said there were 89,402 people at the Saints game in London. Did y'all know Mr. Wright flew all the way to London to go to that game? So he was one of those people. So first, before we answer this question, let's take a second to jot down the difference between an observation and an inference. So here it says an observation is made using our 5 senses. So it's something we either smell or see or hear or taste or touch. An inference is a conclusion or a prediction or really a guess to explain something we observe. So the first one is a statement of fact. Make your paper look like mine, so make sure you're writing this down. Statement of fact. And the next one is actually a guess. So Ms. Talbert is saying 89,402 people were counted at the Saints game. Is this an inference or an observation? Ms. Talbert said it was an inference. So is she right or wrong? Pause the video, put your thumb in the air so Ms. Talbert knows you're working silent and solo. Go ahead and answer that question. Go. All right, taking a look at the last question on this page, your answer should sound just like mine. Ms. Talbert is incorrect. Come on, Ms. Talbert, what's wrong with you? Numerical data is always an observation because it can be proven true and observed with our eyes. If you need to fix your answer or copy my answer down after first trying on your own, then go ahead and do that right now. Once you are done, go ahead and turn the page so we can move on to page 2. Here we have our science sprint. What you need to do, silent and solo on your own, use your word bank to answer questions 1 through 10. It should take you about 2 minutes. Ready, set, go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at our vocab. So number 1, animal that chases after another animal to hunt and eat it is a predator. Make sure that you are spelling these words correctly. Oh, my nail looks cute right there. Hey, girl. Animal that hides or runs away to try to escape from another is the prey. A single living thing is an organism. Conditions that prevent a population from going any bigger is the carrying capacity. Organisms that can use sunlight to make their own food, producer. Organisms that must eat other organisms in order to get their food, consumer. Organisms that eat dead organisms and break down their bodies, decomposer. The job or role that an organism plays in nature, niche. Living stuff in nature, biotic. Non-living stuff in nature, abiotic. If you need to pause the video here to get these words down, go ahead and do that because anything that is incomplete will be a lunch intervention if you're one of the classes before lunch, and will be an after-school intervention if you are after lunch. Ooh, that sucks, so don't get that. Now, once you are done, we're going to move down to the bottom to take some notes. Again, if you need to write down those vocab words at the top, go ahead and pause the video to do that. So looking at our background information, what are we talking about today? We are talking about food chains and food webs, one of my favorite topics. So remember we said earlier that sunlight is the source Oh my goodness, my hand is all big and what's called. Sunlight is the source of energy in an ecosystem. We know that sunlight gives energy to producers. Our algae, or whatever organism you see at the beginning of the food chain or beginning of the food web, is always our producer. Anything that eats the producer is going to be a consumer. And we're going to get into the different types of consumers in just a second. If an organism eats other organisms, it is also a consumer. Consumer and consumer. Now, whenever we get to the last item in a food chain, this is our apex predator, which simply means this organism is at the top of the food chain. You don't want to mess with this predator. He's fierce, or she could be. Don't be like Jesse. You probably want to tease the shark. No, get your neck chopped off. Don't do it. All right, let's take a few notes at the bottom. So producers are organisms that use sunlight to make their own food. Consumers, on the other hand, must receive energy from other organisms. And my favorite, decomposers. These are organisms that break down the remains of dead plants and animals to put nutrients back in the soil for producers. So decomposers are essential to the growth and development of producers. All right, so again, producers, organisms that use sunlight to make their own food. Consumers, organisms that must receive energy from other organisms. Decomposers, organisms that break down the remains of dead plants and animals to put nutrients back in the soil for producers. So if we're looking at these three, which one are we? That was a little rhyme. I didn't even expect that to happen. Oh, I got skills. So would you say that humans are producers, consumers, or decomposers? Go ahead and whisper it into the computer right now. It's like Dora the Explorer. Really, do it right now. 1, 2, 3, consumers. You're right, consumers. Woo! If you need to pause the video here to get down the notes, go ahead and do that. If not, go ahead and turn the page. So with all the information that we've learned, we want to go ahead and fill in these blanks at the top. Alrighty, it says all energy starts from the sun, and only plants are able to produce glucose. This is what we call their food. Therefore, plants, which we also call, you guessed it, producers, are always the starting point for food chains. A food chain uses arrows to show the direction that energy is being passed. The arrows always point from the source of energy to the consumer. So we're going to practice really quick with drawing and labeling our food chain and food web with our producers, our consumers, and our decomposers. So first, we'll just draw a simple food chain. So we will draw grass. We will draw a caterpillar. and a bird. So we have grass, caterpillar. I have no idea how to draw a caterpillar. Just do the best you can. And a bird. Tucker got skills. So here we have our grass, which is the producer. We have our caterpillar, which is a consumer. And we have our bird, which is also our consumer. Now, if we wanted to add a layer to this food chain, we could add mushrooms, which are going to be a decomposer. And we'll write mushrooms on top. And remember, once all of these things die, it means that the mushrooms are going to act as decomposers. They're going to break down the nutrients in these organisms, return them to the soil, and then that will be energy for the grass to grow. Now, let's draw a sample food web. Again, if you need to pause the video to get this down, go ahead and do it. Food webs are a little more complicated. So we could have berries at the bottom, which could go to a bird or a cricket or a bear. And then we could have a small fish here, here, and here. Okay? So if we take a look at this food web, let's jot down two quick relationships from it. One thing that we can see is that the berries give energy to 3 different organisms: the bear, the bird, and the cricket. And the cricket is probably just eating the leaves on the plant that carries the berries. So we can say that the berries give energy to the bear and bird. Now we can also say, if we're talking about this small fish, that the small fish gives energy to the bird and the bear. Small fish gives energy to bear and bird. So the arrow means gives energy to, or it means that the small fish is going to be eaten by the bird, or the small fish is going to be eaten by the bear, or gives energy to the bear. Whatever is going to consume the object, it's going to draw an arrow almost like it's going into that organism's mouth. So the big difference between our food chain and our food web is that in the food web, we can see multiple paths of energy coming from one different organism. This one organism, this one producer, gives energy to 3 different species or 3 different populations, whereas here, there's just one consistent flow of energy. All right, let's go ahead and turn the page, and let's take a look at our text for the day. I'm going to read. At the end of the reading, if there's a question, we'll stop. You'll answer that question on your own, and then we'll move on. Let's take a look. All righty. At the top, it says another link in the food chain. As you study more about ecosystems and cycles in life, you will see the terms food chains and food webs. Not 2 chains, food chains. They describe the same series of events that happen when one organism consumes another to survive. Food web is a more accurate term since every organism is involved with several other organisms. Cows might be food for humans, bacteria, or flies. Each of those flies might be connected to frogs, microbes, and those are microscopic things we can't see, or spiders. There are dozens of connections for every organism. When you draw all of those connecting lines, you get a web-like shape. So we talked about it just a little while ago, but how is a food chain different from a food web? Go ahead and answer that question now. So hopefully your answer sounds just like mine. It says a food chain traces one series or flow of energy through an ecosystem, while a food web traces several paths of energy across many organisms in one ecosystem. Let's take a look at the next part, which is all about producers. Producers are the beginning of a simple food chain. Producers are plants and vegetables. Plants are at the beginning of every food chain, and the sun is their source of energy. All energy comes from the sun, and the sun is the source of energy for all ecosystems, and plants are the ones who make food with that energy. They use the process of photosynthesis. So my question is, what is the source of energy for all organisms in an ecosystem? Awesome. So the correct answer here should read something like, the source of energy for all organisms in an ecosystem is the sun. Producers use sunlight to make their own food. Now let's talk about consumers. This is probably the most important paragraph because we are going to get into all of the different types of consumers that we can potentially see in an ecosystem. So here we go. Oh my goodness, what is this like, guys? This is crazy. I don't know where that came from. Okay, there we go. The consumers. Consumers are the next link in a food chain. There are 3 levels of consumers. The levels start with the organisms that eat plants. Scientists name this first group of organisms the primary consumers. They are also called herbivores. They are the plant eaters of the chain. It might be a squirrel or it might be an elk. That's like a deer. This right here. It will be out there eating plants and fruits. It will not eat animals. 2 big important terms here, and they mean the exact same thing. All right, question 3 says, what is an herbivore? What other name do scientists use to describe an herbivore? Go ahead and put your thumb up, pause the video, answer that question silent and solo on your own. Alrighty, your answer should sound something like this. An herbivore is an organism that only eats plants. They are also called primary consumers. Alright, let's go ahead and turn the page. If you need to pause the video to get anything down or rewind, go ahead and do that at this time. The next piece is secondary consumers. Secondary consumers eat the primary consumers. A mouse might be a primary consumer and a cat might be the secondary. Secondary consumers are also called carnivores. Carnivore means meat eater. So we have 2 important words there. What's the difference between a primary and secondary consumer? Go ahead and take 1 minute to answer that in a complete sentence, silent and solo. Thumbs up so Ms. Talbert knows you're working. Go. Alrighty, your response should sound something like this. The difference between a primary and secondary consumer is that primary consumers only eat plants, but secondary consumers only eat meat. Let's jump down to the next part. Only 2 sections left in our text. We are moving right along. In some ecosystems, there is a 3rd level of consumer called the tertiary consumer. That means 3rd level. These are consumers that eat the secondary and primary consumers. Ooh, they greedy. A tertiary consumer could be a wolf that eats the cat and the mouse. There are also consumers called omnivores. Omnivores can either be secondary or tertiary consumers. Humans and bears are considered omnivores. We eat meat, plants, and just about anything. Would humans best be described as a carnivore, omnivore, or producer? Explain how you know. Thumbs up, answer that question, silent and solo, go. Humans can best be described as an omnivore because they eat both plants and animals. Let's take a look at our last part of the text, decomposers. The last thing in the chain are the decomposers. If you die, they eat you. Okay, just that simple. If you poop, they eat that. Nasty. If you lose a leaf, they eat it. Whenever something that was alive dies, the decomposers get it. Decomposers break down nutrients in the dead stuff and return it to the soil. The producers can then use the nutrients and elements once it's in the soil. The decomposers complete the system, returning essential molecules to the producers. So what is the role of decomposers in an ecosystem? We'll do this one together. Decomposers break down dead plants and animals into essential molecules / nutrients for the soil. The soil becomes food. Ooh, let's actually not use that word. It becomes nutrients for producers. So really it just helps plants to become stronger, healthier, taller, almost like an energy drink, if you will. All right, if you need to pause the video here to get that down, go ahead and do it. If not, turn the page. Right here we have our practice makes perfect. It says, can you place organisms in the correct place in a food chain and label the part of the ecosystem they represent? Producer, herbivore or primary consumer, carnivore, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, or decomposer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do the first one together, and then you are on your own. So we have 3 organisms in this food chain: bird, flower, caterpillar. Easiest thing to do is label above them if they are a producer, consumer, or decomposer. So bird, I know, is a consumer. Flower, that's a plant. It's going to make its own food. It's a producer. Caterpillar, gonna eat plants. It's a consumer. We know that our food chain always begins with a producer, so we will put flower here. If you want to draw a picture, you can. Most of y'all ain't sweet like me, so your picture gonna be ugly, don't even do it. So this is gonna be our producer. Next organism we need to think, what is the flower gonna give energy to, or what is gonna eat the flower? Is it gonna be the bird or the caterpillar? What logically makes sense is the caterpillar. So if this is an organism that eats plants, we know that it is not just a consumer, but it is an herbivore or primary consumer. So we have one final organism in our food chain, that is the bird. The bird is going to eat another organism that is not a plant, so we know that it is going to be the secondary consumer. And we can also say carnivore. Now notice I didn't jump to the tertiary consumer because I have to go in order. I just went to the next level, which is secondary. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it should take you about 3 or 4 minutes to finish the other 3 examples. Begin. All right, y'all, let's take a look at the answer. So the next one after the practice we did together is going to be oh Lord, let me get my stuff situated. There we go. All right, we have the next one. You should have said acorns, mouse, snake, hawk. So snaps to you if you got the organisms correct. Now let's see if you got your labels correct. Acorns is the producer, mouse, herbivore, primary consumer, snake, carnivore, secondary consumer, hawk, tertiary consumer. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Bridges, Francis, Andrews, Brazil, make sure that you have both labels, herbivore and primary consumer, carnivore, secondary consumer. You need both. You need both. They mean the same thing. We need to begin to learn that when we recognize these words on the test, we know what they mean. Let's go to the next one. You should have said algae, small fish, big fish, dolphin. Here are your labels below. No one. You should have said plant, grasshopper, lizard, eagle. Here are your labels. Oh, and mushrooms, which should have been your decomposer. All right, if you need to pause the video to get these down, go ahead and do that at this time. Last piece for today is your independent practice. What you are going to do is put a thumbs up, silent and solo. You are going to attempt this on your own. When you are done, you're going to put a thumbs up. That's a lie because then it's confusing because we've been putting thumbs up for something else the whole time. When you are done, you are going to hold up a fist. When you hold up a fist, that lets Miss Talbert know that you have completed the entire assignment for today and you are ready for her to check your work on the independent practice. All right, after this, we're going to move to our exit ticket. Y'all did a phenomenal job today. Some of you, probably some other folks, some ugly cheering didn't do too well, but that's okay. For those of you who are working hard, I appreciate you. Have a great day, 5th grade.